As a respected leader, elder, and past president of the Yukon Association of Non-Status Indians, also known as YANSI, during the late 1970s, Bill Weber has shared so many important stories and perspective with us over the years. As we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow, we celebrate the opportunity to talk about the past 50 years, to hear his perspectives on the past, the present, and also the future. Once again, this time with the theme of discussing and celebrating the success in a changing global economy, please welcome to the stage Mr. Bill Weber. You can smile, Bill. It's all right, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for your interest and on this historic occasion. And I thought I should take the opportunity to identify who I am a little bit. My background in the Yukon. My ancestry is from Marsh Lake people. I'm Tagish Kwan, and also adopted to the Teslin folks. Adopted me as Duckloady, and I'm already Duckloady from Tagish, but anyway, so they just reinforced the Duckloady, and they gave me a name as well, Potlatch. And that name is, it actually comes from the Teslin area. It's about the ice breaking up in the spring on the Sutland River. And so it's a very specific name. Anyway, just a little bit about my history. As he said, I was president of YANSI for 5 years, and those were pretty exciting times. And also I served a couple of years 3 years, I think, as vice chairman of economic development with Council for Yukon Indians, and it was all interesting stuff. And I also was manager of the Canada-Yukon Economic Development Agreements for a number of years, so I've got a bit of experience with economic development, and I've seen a lot of changes over the years. So anyway, with that, I'll let Peter.
No, and I appreciate the history for the ones that may not know. Previous to the Council of Yukon First Nations, there was also vice chairs that served under the Grand Chief, or the chair as it was known back in the day, and each vice chair had specific portfolios. Can you talk a little bit about why those portfolios were given to you, Bill, and it was something that you had to apply for, or were you elected, or how did you come upon these opportunities?
Yeah, actually, at those times, the way the Council for Yukon Indians was established, it was a territorial election, and so we had to run as candidates, and it was interesting times. We had to go out to the communities and convince them, that we could do a good job for them. And James Allen traveled with me a bit, and we used to always know where the non-status people were living, because he used to tease me because he'd see legs sticking out from underneath the vehicles there, people working on them. That was the non-status people. Anyway, that's sort of the kind of lifestyle that a lot of our people were forced to live in those times, and so we had to do a lot of repairs on our own vehicles, stuff like that. But anyway, the portfolios were assigned to us, and there was actually a few vice chairmen or chair people, because some of the women also got roles as vice chairs of administration, and I ended up getting vice chair of economic development, and there was vice chair of recreation. Different portfolios were assigned, and it was a pretty big effort Yukon-wide to try and deliver new services to First Nations from a First Nation perspective. So we brought off a lot of changes that way. So yeah, times changed over the years and done many things.
For sure. And you talk about perspective. How important was our perspective back in late 60s, early 70s?
When we started off back in 73 with encouragement from Elijah Smith to get involved, things were pretty rough for all First Nation people. Mm-hmm. We had, a lot of our people had come from a wage economy, cutting wood on the riverboats, and and they were busy, very busy people, trapping and hunting and supporting themselves, and so very industrious people at the time before the Indian Act came along and started restricting people's movements and what they could do or couldn't do, and putting them in little houses and a little plot of land here or there. So it really changed things for First Nation people.
From your perspective, was there even division amongst our people because of the government policy that not only separated us, obviously through the enfranchisement, let alone, instruments such as the Indian Act, which was really governed to take the Indian out of the child, if you will? Very
clearly, and that was part of our reason to get organized as well, was the injustices, not only to non-status people, but families were split up. Brothers and sisters were, like families had, half of them would be non-status and half of them would be status, or, different situations existed for all the families. So we had a lot to deal with, had a lot on our plates when we first started out.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the encouragement or people that mentored you to get involved? We look back to Joe Jacko and others that had led that charge based on Indian policy that had not only, like you mentioned, severed our families in half, but who might have been an individual or an experience that might have motivated you not only to get involved. You mentioned Elijah, but the reality for people that were caught in that YANSI world, if you will, was a lot different than First Nations that were still trying to define, let alone get their rights back.
There wasn't a lot of mentorship. It was basically, a lot of it was based on our own experiences and knowledge. And those of us involved, including Margaret, we could see the injustices that were going on. And our people were living in shacks, and in cold weather, there'd be icicles hanging down from the roof to the ground, and it was a sign of poor insulation, and there was very little insulation in the houses, and the windows had one single pane of glass in them if they were lucky, and some people could afford a little bit of plastic to put on there to make a storm window, but people used to bank their houses up with snow to try and keep the heat in, and education was another issue that was just our people couldn't make it through the system. The education system didn't really support our people, so we had a lot of work to do.
For sure, let alone get the interest of government, which obviously would be one of the main funding sources. How important was it for you not only to come with a plan, if you will, but also to incorporate that plan to ensure that our people's voices are being heard? But how were you able to fund those opportunities, if you will, as you mentioned, traveling around the territory?
We started off just documenting the way things were. Like, we took pictures of the conditions that people were living in. Some of our elders were living in a tent in minus 40, a trapline tent, and that was their cabin, basically. They'd bank it up and just keep the fire going. Sorry, I'm not speaking into the mic properly, right, but anyway, there were just so many things, and we started off with doing, putting together a proposal to CMHC and showed them the conditions that existed. And next thing, we came up with a program called Winter Warmth. And through the Winter Warmth program, some cases we bought blankets for people because they didn't have enough bedding and, proper bedding and things like that. So we even built, in a couple of cases, we built small houses, something to give them a better shelter. And economic development was basically a dream at that point. We had so many other things. We knew that we had to get involved in business eventually, and that came later. And we really had to work to engage in businesses, and we encouraged that too. We've done a lot of work traveling around the territory, encouraging our people to get into tourism businesses or get involved because there was a lot of marketable skills, like even guiding and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and even if you refer to the Little Golden Book, there is a lot of examples of what the nations wanted back in the day, and a lot of it was fisheries, or we wanted simple things such as a phone booth in our community. What was the perspective from your findings, if you will, from Old Crow to Teslin to Haines Junction to Ross River? What was maybe some of the common themes that people just wanted to see in their community?
Well, actually, people found it a little difficult even to start really thinking about businesses because of the social conditions that existed. Mm-hmm. But it was a pretty common theme right through the territory. Even in Old Crow, some of the housing was very inadequate. So, yeah, throughout Yukon, we've seen that same kind of thing.
And you can't really be thinking about opportunities through business without fixing those social errors, if you will, right?
That's right.
Yes. So in regards to your perspective, how important was the amalgamation not only of the Yukon Native Brotherhood, the Yukon Association of Non-Status Indians, along with the women's group, Aboriginal women's group, how important was that amalgamation for our people to not only take what government has given us, but also to encourage our people to come together as a collective under one roof?
I think it was pretty key. Like, we had been doing a lot of things together, like basic stuff like recreation. We formed the Yukon Indian Hockey Association, and we started basic things like that jointly with the Brotherhood, and we were working together on different things. And so eventually we were hearing from our elders, we want our grandchildren back. We don't want you to be working separately. And so we started to think about that, and we needed to get our people on side. So we started going out doing hearings in the communities, talked to them, and had elders meetings as well to see, where we could go with this. But it's one thing to want to work together and form one organization and amalgamation, but we also had our rights, at the back of our mind always, that we still had people that were not entitled to their basic rights of hunting and fishing and some of the services that First Nations were getting through Diane, as little as they were. Our people were missing out on that. So.
And if you're just tuning in to Facebook Live or Shone FM, you're listening to the 50th annual Together Today for Our Children Tomorrow speaker series, and we have Bill Weber live here in the studio, if you will. So with that, just in regards to where we have come in the last 50 years, how important is it for us to see ourselves in the economy, Bill?
We're a pretty young organization, when you think of it, compared to the government of Canada, but I think our people have done a lot. And when you look at the businesses that exist today and how involved people are, like, over half the businesses in the territory, I swear, are under First Nation control now. Mm-hmm. So, it's so wonderful to see those changes that took place, that over the years, we started out just buying the odd little business interest, and now our corporations are very much involved and doing well with the investments.
And then equally as important, and how important is it for our youth now to understand not only the journey that we've been on for the last 50 years, but the role that they will play in the future? And obviously you've got grandchildren and maybe even great-grandchildren. How important is it for them now to understand and really appreciate the journey, let alone the opportunity that lies ahead for them?
It's very key, for the young people to step up to the plate, get involved, and continue the work that the elders started, and enjoy the opportunities that are out there, and take an active part. And so, our group are starting to do a book now, and under the Yukon Association of Non-Status Indians, and the Whitehorse Aboriginal Women's Council have agreed to support that, because we needed a sponsor for helping put the book together. So we're starting to do that necessary research to, make sure that the young people know where we've been, and it's all positive to make sure people understand. Okay, we understand where we've been, and we know where we're going. Mm-hmm. You have to know where you've been to plan your future, and so it's key. I was involved as well with the Kwanlin Dun First Nation, putting that book together to make sure that our history is documented as well. And, it's so important to see those things documented.
Mm-hmm. In just regards to a lot of the success that we've been able to face over the last 50 years, what are some of the challenges that you still see that are in front of First Nations today when it comes to economic development?
I think systemic discrimination is still existing, and, in some cases, and we've got a ways to go with that. But I think if our young people get involved and, take their rightful place, we're going to overcome a lot of that. And it all takes time because, we're still suffering as well from, the effects of mission school and those kind of things. So we've got a lot of healing to do yet, and it takes a few generations.
And how important is government's role in all this at the end of the day? Because obviously a lot of the dysfunction that we face as a society and as a people and as a nation is because of government policy through the Indian Act and legislation that has been withholding, if you will, the opportunity for us to progress.
Well, I think governments need to, step up to the plate as well and make sure that where support can be done, and we talk about reconciliation. What does that mean to somebody? They need to make sure that they understand the agreements and the role. And it's not just the Yukon First Nation people that benefited from land claims. It's all Yukoners have benefited from it. You look at the other businesses in the territory as well; they're doing well. With the growth of the population tells you something as well, that people want to live here.
That's right.
And so they're moving to the Yukon. So I think we're doing the right things.
And what do you think that we have to offer here in the territory as compared to other jurisdictions in Canada, let alone around the world?
That's a good question. There's so many things, so many fields to be involved in. Clearly we need to be involved in every aspect, and that's one of the things we tried to get in the land claims agreements was involvement in every, instead of sitting back and somebody else making the decisions on development, we need to be part of that. So we fought for participation, mm-hmm. and that was one of the mottos of our association years ago, was equal acceptance through equal participation for a balanced society. And that still goes. Mm-hmm. We need to work towards that.
For sure. And we're going to be celebrating a staff event on Thursday with a staff dinner. And there's been many people that have worked for the Council of Yukon First Nations, the Council of Yukon Indians. And we're still lucky to have people such as Anna Fraser still working with us today, Marcia Flood, many people that have worked there. What was the environment like back in the early 70s, and what motivated people to pick up and carry that responsibility forward, if you will, from a staffing perspective?
We've seen the need for training and development for many years, and that was part of we negotiated different programs as well. The Northern Careers Program done a lot for our people, and it's those kind of things that are important. You need to make sure that people get the opportunities for training and involvement in things, and we also talked about underfill and stuff like that too, to try and bring people on board and get their interest up. So there was a lot of areas that were followed up on.
For sure. And building that collective, I mean, we still strive for that today. And they use the word unity a lot of cases as an example of us coming together. How important, especially from your perspective, that today we need each other more than ever, let alone as respective nations across this territory, to come together as a collective, not only to pursue, as our previous guest, Jay had mentioned, you know, when it comes to energy opportunities or opportunities for us to get into the economy. How important is it for that collective perspective from the First Nation?
Oh, it's so important to continue to work together, and we also need to make sure of inclusion. You know, there's still people left out, and we need to strive to make sure that that we do include people, that all of our people, and you know, the agreements agreed on a certain criteria for enrollment in land claims, but I don't think it's necessarily being delivered all the way. And so, you know, everybody needs to step up to the plate and say, how do we make sure this happens? So, you know, there's work to be done yet.
For sure. And you've served terms on council, or at least in the elder capacity for Kwon Dun. How important is it for our nation now to not only bring the people, our citizens along, let alone the next generation, to ensure that there's not only capacity building, as you expressed many times through the discussion of those underfilled positions, but also just getting people inspired to be in part of the government?
Well, those are important issues. There's no question about it. And the elders are getting very active all the time, and, you know, raising the issues and needs of the First Nation people. And so, yeah, we're always involved.
Yes, and continue to do so. And just in regards to your own personal experience, is there a moment or a person in your time, in your history, that has not only motivated you, but instilled that sense of pride and responsibility?
Well,
other than your wife, of course, but...
Clearly,
we haven't talked about Adeline very much today, but that's all right.
Clearly, Adeline was always there for me, and you know, and that's important for families to support each other. And we had very similar interests, and we're exposed to the same kind of things, I guess, in life, and so we understood each other a lot, and it reflects on families when you can work together and to help achieve what you know what you want to achieve.
For sure. And just to wrap things up, Bill, where do you see our people in the next 50 years when it comes to the economy?
Well, you know, there's only one way, and that's up. And you know, I think we're just going to keep on building and doing well with our economic activities. And you know, there's so many things there's so many irons in the fire right now, and it's just a matter of making sure that they succeed and make them work.
For sure. And with that, we'd just like to thank you, Bill, for your time today. I want to also thank you very much for your commitment to the process, and just want to appreciate your time today and say, thank you very much, Bill.